Okay, so I just put it like this. Okay, so if you can hear me and see the slides, that's really wonderful. So welcome to the third keynote with the title How Celonis and Symbio Revolutionize the Internal Auditing Process. And we mean the internal auditing process at Uniper. So we have two guests, and I'm very happy to have them here. Just skip this. The first one is Owais Sami Khan from Uniper, our customer, and Peyman Badakhshan from Celonis, our partner. And let's go back to the agenda. And what I like to do is to give you a small introduction, a short introduction into the topic. Just recap something of our Symbio journey, and then we jump directly into the Uniper use case, because I think that's the interesting point at the moment. And of course, we're not only showing you the use case, we show you the solution as well. And in the end, as we had it with the two other keynotes, we will have a workshop where we try to create some ideas for further areas of application of a business navigation system. So the thing is, what is a business navigation system? We will bring some light into this darkness, hopefully, and we show you the use case at Uniper. Well, I try to start with an idea, basically coming from Frederick Taylor. You all know him. Frederick Taylor predicted about 100 years ago that the increase of productivity through machines would be so enormous that not we, but only the machines would work in the future. Well, and today we know something went wrong on that way. So, but what we try to do is to make the machines work a bit more. And this is what we see here on this first slide is Symbio as a map combined with the real-time data coming from Celonis in that case. And this is the first step to make machines work a bit more. That's just what Google did. Maybe you remember the introduction of Jennifer about Google, because Google helps us nowadays. It gives us some advice or shows us the best route from A to B. And so the machine works more than we do in that case. And we try to do the same thing in the company. We let the software work more than we do, because software is or will be enabled to guide us and to show us the best way from A to B. And what this has to do with our use case, Samuel will explain afterwards, because this is the vision behind it. That's what I just want to show you as well. The big thing is not only to have this know-how usable in the company. We are convinced that the future belongs to the ecosystems. So it's important that we don't have it just in a company, but also over the borders of a company connected to the suppliers and to the customers as well. So everybody is involved in one and even more than one ecosystem. And to monitor and control this, we have to have the combination of a map combined with real-time data coming from a lot of databases. So we have some more options that this intercompany processes will run well. And what has that got to do with auditing, the Uniper use case? Sorry, that's a bit sensitive today. The Uniper use case is about the auditing process, and what it's got to do with performance and saving money and making things easier. Sammy will explain us now. So I switch over to Sammy.
Okay, can you hear me? Is the
Yes.
audio okay? Brilliant. All right.
Works.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Owais Sami Khan. I'm a business architect at Uniper Global Commodities based in Düsseldorf, Germany. I was asked to present one of the pilots that we are running currently with Plutz and Sella. If you could go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to who Uniper is before we actually talk about processes. So Uniper is an international energy provider. It's present in about 40 countries and with roughly 11,500 employees. We generate, trade, and market energy on a large scale. We also procure and store as well as supply other commodities such as natural gas, LNG, coal, and many other energy-related products. Our physical portfolio includes power generation and energy storage. Our conventional power production, you can see it in the picture over here, is very diverse with gas or coal, hydroelectric, nuclear, and several types of production. We also operate gas storages as well as support in infrastructure projects for gas. Our sales business is usually selling, on one hand, energy products such as power, coal, gas, things like this to medium to large customers. Think of your local Stadtwerke, think of a manufacturing plant which is producing steel, think of all the telephone stores which are selling telephone contracts. So let's say the 1,000 stores of Vodafone or O2, so big contracts. And then our sales department also sells other services such as operations, maintenance, engineering, optimization. Feel free to visit our website, uniper.energy. There's a lot more information there and also some nice videos you can see just to learn a bit about the company. And then on the next slide, we can look at maybe on the processes one more time. So we really believe that our processes are a key building block to gain competitive advantage and to maximize value for our customers. And Uniper is using multiple tools for managing processes for different functional requirements. For this use case, we can categorize our processes into two categories. You can think of the as-is processes and you can think of the should-be processes. As-is is your reality. This is how processes run today. In reality, on a daily basis, should-be processes are what the standard operating procedures are that we document in a system. So you can see we use a tool called Celonis, which is helping us discover real-life processes to see how conformant they are to our standards. And it also helps us with the ability to document our processes from time to time. Symbio, on the other hand, is our process modeling tool which we use to document how things should run. It's the should be tool. It also includes much more information such as what is the relationship of processes to each other, how are they connected, what are the IT applications being used in a process, are there any risks or controls, etc. What we also do using Symbio is generate user handbooks and working instructions. Think of your engineer who needs to overhaul a generator or a boiler. He would generally generate a report out of Symbio. This will give him working instructions to say, okay, this is how I need to perform my risk assessment. This is how I need to open the lid of my power plant generator, etc. And the end goal always is to optimize, and by connecting both systems together and somehow figure out how can we improve and how can we continuously keep improving our processes. And we try to integrate both tools. And maybe if we look at the next slide, then we can see what we are trying to do is we started thinking about how can we combine the power of Celonis and Symbio and come up with some beneficial use cases. The first one that we came up with was something to do with compliance or audit. So here the idea was pretty simple. We are trying to compare the reality of our processes with our documented process and see what are the deviations. This is a good start to see how well are we living our processes today? Whatever we have defined earlier, is this how we live on a daily basis? And if we go to the next point, then we can see actually not all deviations are bad. Sometimes deviations will give you optimization potential as well. So you will see that there is rework happening always in the same place. The process always goes from step 5 to step 3, or you realize that the operator has figured out a much better way of doing something and he hasn't documented it yet. So sometimes you find deviations and you figure out, oh, actually, I need to look at this, analyze it and see, can I improve something out of it? And then if we click once more, then we can see the automation. And the automation case still needs a bit more exploring. But what we would like to do is identify candidates where we can automate our processes. If you want to automate processes, you need some information. You need to know how many digital inputs do I have? You need to know how much human intervention is involved. What is the front to end picture? How much repetition is happening across different functional departments? How long does a process run? How often does a process run? Once you figure these things out, then you can decide, okay, these are good candidates for automation, these are not. Today we are doing this very manually, but this information is partly available in Symbio, partly in Celonis. And if we can bring it all together, it can highlight for us where is the real potential. And if I look at the compliance case a bit more in detail in the next slide, then I just wanted to highlight that generally, this case is not just for audit. This is a case which is useful for process owners as well. The high level goal, of course, is that we need to provide an overview which looks at multiple areas in the organization instead of just looking at one department or one process at a time. This will help us prioritize the more important problem areas and avoid any silo thinking and analyzing things in silos. In most of my experience running optimization projects, I've seen most of the value comes from the front to end value chain, not within a department, but across departments. And this is something we need to make more visible. If you could click again, Raina, please, thank you. Then we can see that we also observed that sometimes the process is done differently for different customers, or it runs differently for different commodities. And if we have a central report that is coming from the integration, it will help us identify best practice. So we can really see, okay, there are some legal requirements, they have to be fulfilled by all the areas, or there are some best practice ways of doing it. Sometimes you go to 3 people and they're invoicing different customers in different ways, and you figure out maybe there is a standard that can be followed. And then the last point is the most important one. We really see that every time somebody wants to analyze a process, every time somebody wants to conduct an audit, there is a lot of manual effort. You need to interview people, you need to do a lot of shadowing, you need to analyze existing documentation, and you need to compile a lot of documentation and reports. We would like to significantly reduce this effort. And if we can reduce this effort, we have save time on tedious tasks and actually spend more time on analysis and on things like, okay, how can we actually improve our process, and how can we actually look for potential where things can be automated or things can be changed, bottlenecks can be removed, waiting can be reduced, etc. So what I will do now is I'll hand over to Peyman, who's been working with us a lot from the Celonis side. He will talk a bit about the role of Celonis overall, as well as the solution that we have discussed and what we want to look at. So thanks a lot for your attention, and over to you, Peyman.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sami. Also, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. Perfect. Yeah, just wanted to check. Thank you very much. Yeah, also hi from my side. As Rainer already also introduced us, I'm a product manager at Celonis, responsible for topics related to process analytics, repository, and conformance checking. we already heard from Symbio and Uniper side. Now I have the pleasure to present the Celonis perspective also as part of this innovation project among the three organizations. Celonis, as a process mining market leader, is a global organization with 2 headquarters in Munich and in New York, and various offices and hubs around the world, such as the UK, the Netherlands, Japan, Spain, and so on. We are doubling the size every year and already have done more than 2,000 implementations in all regions and industries. Can you change the slide, please? Thanks. Yeah, from different industries, like from manufacturing, telecommunication, and healthcare to financial services, oil and gas and energy. And here in this slide, you can actually see like a sample of the logos of the companies that are creating value with Celonis. At Celonis, we basically work together closely with our customers to support them in turning frictions to flows based on our process mining technology. But what is process mining? Thank you very much. Process mining in theory is basically a bridge that connects the process world and data world. It is bringing process-related topics such as process management, automation, process control, and so on, closer to data-related topics such as data mining, statistics, machine learning, etc., etc. If you go to the next slide. Thanks. So this picture nicely explains the concept of process mining. So I copied this from the slides of Professor Will van der Aalst, who is known as the godfather of process mining. On the right side, you basically see how the systems are designed or modeled. It represents the legacy systems and how processes basically look like in the mind of people. On the left side, though, you see the deviations or variances that represents reality. This reality in the form of deviations might be linked to fraud and violation, but as Sami also mentioned in the presentation, it can be some shortcuts and some optimizations that are causing better results, but not yet documented. Anyhow, this reality of the process execution is captured in the live source systems, such as ERP systems, and can be extracted in the form of event logs or event data. So the technology, process mining technology, takes the advantage of these footprints and visualizes the real executed process models and allows drilling down to find root causes. The next slide is basically what Sami already explained. I just like shortly refer to it, that like these two models and their general capabilities. These capabilities from both sides are complementary for different use cases. The more we integrate the two, the more we bring the as-is world and should-be world together. One example is the case when we have available data in Celonis, and therefore we can take the advantage of mining capability to get the initial process model and move it to, for instance, Symbio for further documentation and completing the models. So like adding the manual tasks, for instance, things that are not time-stamped in the systems. With these, we can avoid very time-consuming interviews and workshops to model the conceptual process model that is just in the mind of people. So we take the advantage of data, we mine the basic model, and then we can basically complete that model afterwards. On the other hand, we would like to reuse the processes that are already modeled. So in this case, we need to have one BPMN file that represents the end-to-end process model. Bring it to Celonis as a should-be model or target model and compare it against the discovered process. This is namely conformance checking. And with that, we would be able to, with that comparison, we will be able to find process violations and deviations. If we move to the next slide, so I already referred to the conformance checking. So to do conformance checking, again, as I said, we need one BPMN file that represents the end-to-end process model. This is the way we basically represent the process on process mining side. To give one example, if you look at source to pay process, this can include strategic sourcing, contract management, purchasing, and invoicing. If you look at process architectures, though, we see functional silos, such as specific flows in procurement, logistics, or accounting. Different activities that are in the purchase to pay end-to-end process are defined and included in these different silos, and therefore various BPMN files would be exported that are not sufficient for conformance checking. So to overcome this issue, we provided the list of activities, so how they are basically defined on the Celonis data model side. And at the same time, the process owner or the auditor, they also know how the process looks like from end-to-end perspective. And on top of that, an algorithm is developed by Symbio that looks for activities in different silos and create one BPMN file to be used on Celonis side. The results of conformance checking, as well as monitoring the process in process or variant explorer on process mining side, also helps the auditors to realize then process deviations and violations that are supposed to be included in the audit report. All these efforts are still conducted in a manual fashion, though. For instance, storing all observations of deviations or importing, exporting BPMN files between the two systems. So you can always manually export your BPMN file and import it to the other system, but the manual work is still very time consuming, and the aim is to reduce it as much as possible. So in the next slide, you also see the overview that we went a big step ahead by developing a new service at Celonis called Process Repository that is meant to be the environment at Celonis to integrate with the BPM world. So the process architecture can be formed, categories be created, and process models as well as observations, as I mentioned, can be stored in the repository. We then provide public APIs, so from technical point of view, that allows for creating automatic exchange of information and provides the possibility to create and edit categories and process models. This capability, on the one hand, enables receiving the should-be models for conformance checking. So that's what we discussed. So when we design the model on Symbio side, then we bring this model to Celonis. So it enables receiving the should-be models. We can make sure that the models are up to date in the two systems, and we are not dealing with different versions of processes in different systems. And on the other hand, it allows sending the as-is results for creation of an audit report. So the audit report template in this case will be provided on Symbio side, and certain values within this report will be filled from findings of Celonis that are mainly snapshots of process deviations and inefficiencies that needs to be eliminated and optimized. And the plan is to have all of these in an automatic fashion to more and better support the internal audit use case. I hope I'm not over time, but that's basically from my side. Also, thanks very much for listening. If we have some time left, I will be very happy to take some questions.
We're a bit over time, but it's still fine. And yeah, there's actually one question that just popped in. Just let me sort them a little bit. So the first question is it possible to import key performance indicators, relevant data, example, throughputs, times, or idle times via the interface to Symbio and analyze them there?
So basically, we are So what I presented so far was basically moving the process models and process deviations and findings from Celonis to Symbio. And that's also one thing we are already discussing. So in what form and how do we want to also transfer this information? So like one of the solutions that we have in mind is basically enriched BPMN export from, for instance, from the variant explorer on process mining side. So we already know like how many cases are involved. Let's say we have like 70,000 cases for purchase to pay for certain variants. And then we also have the information on what is, for example, the waiting time, the processing time, like this median cycle time between the activities, etc., etc. And when we go through this enriched BPMN and we export it, then this data is then automatically exported and moved to Symbio.
Okay, thank you. I actually got another one. Can Symbio already give recommendations for the user in this special use case?
Maybe I should answer this. No, at the moment, not yet. Yeah, because we are in a very early stage now in the provided first version, just exchanging the data and then analyzing it more or less manually. Yeah? The analysis, not the documentation. And if we get in a later stage, I think it should be an aim and target to have this automatically done. So that we can say that the software gives some advice to the user. Yes, but we're not yet there.
Okay, and then I have like another one. What advantages would an ecosystem have from such a tool, tool network? Sorry.
Okay, in my opinion, it somehow widens the focus. If you use a map, we say Symbio is the map, and you use real-time data that enables you to navigate through the streets, and not only through your streets, that means your company, but also to an entire ecosystem, an entire country. You have, well, you can identify more or less, or you can identify more advantages or not so advantageous routes. So it's not concerning your own company only. It's concerning the whole country, so the whole ecosystem of companies which work together. And I think what Sami said in his part of the presentation, that these improvements which are cross-functional or that affect more than one process are the best ones. That's the same idea behind that. So you don't only have to focus on your company.
And then there's one short question. Will the deviations be detected in Symbio or in Celonis?
Well, the deviations are detected in Celonis, let's say in Celonis first. And then, of course, we have to evaluate, is the deviation a good thing or a bad thing? That happens in Symbio, but they are detected in Celonis.
So thank you very much. And thanks, guys, for your presentation. And again, let's move through our last workshop. I will post the workshop link again in the Q&A and also the link to the whiteboard. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.